Welcome to our YouTube channel, The Alien Tales, and please ensure that you have subscribed.
She communicates through color changes. I've been colorblind my entire life. Her emotions ripple across her skin in chromatic waves. I've built a device to translate what I can't see, but some things technology can't capture. The transport shuttle's emergency beacon pierced through Europa's thin atmosphere like a dying star. As the colony's chief engineer, I was first on scene when the craft crashed into the ice plains beyond New Geneva. The hull had cracked open like an egg, spilling strange cargo across the frozen landscape. That's where I found her. She lay unconscious among the wreckage, her form humanoid but unlike anything in our databases. Her skin shifted between what my colleagues later described as opalescent blues and concerned purples, though to me she appeared in familiar shades of gray. My monochromatic world had never felt like a limitation until that moment. "Thane, step back," Dr. Rivera warned, her scanner beeping frantically. "The readings are off the charts. She's not human," but I couldn't move. Something about her stillness, the way frost gathered on her translucent features, stirred a protective instinct I'd never experienced. When her eyes fluttered open, large, luminous, and filled with what I could only describe as liquid starlight, I knew my life had changed forever. She tried to speak, but no sound emerged. Instead, waves of what others described as golden warmth rippled across her skin. The pattern was complex, deliberate, like watching someone paint with light itself. "She's trying to communicate," I whispered, kneeling beside her despite the protests of the medical team. Her gaze locked onto mine, and for a heartbeat, I swore I could almost understand what those shifting patterns meant. Almost 3 weeks passed before she was stable enough for extended contact. The medical bay had become her temporary home, and I found myself visiting daily under the pretense of checking the life support systems. In reality, I was fascinated by the constant symphony of color changes that played across her skin. Dr. Rivera had dubbed her Iris, a name that seemed both scientific and strangely fitting. She'd learned to nod and shake her head, to point and gesture, but her true communication remained locked behind the barrier of her chromatic language. "The patterns are consistent," I explained to the research team, displaying my recordings on the holographic projector. "When she's hungry, this sequence appears. When she's tired, this one. She's not just changing colors randomly. She's speaking." Dr. Rivera crossed her arms. "And you want to build a translator? Thane, you're an engineer, not a linguist." "I'm a colorblind engineer," I corrected. "I see the world in patterns and structures, not distractions." "Maybe that's exactly what this needs." That evening, I sat beside Iris's bed with my tablet, sketching rough diagrams. She watched with interest, occasionally touching my arm. Each touch sent what the others described as curious silver spirals across her skin. To me, it was simply another pattern to decode. She pointed to my sketches, then to herself, then back to the drawings. Her skin erupted in what Dr. Rivera later called excited golden bursts. Even in my grayscale world, I could see she understood. We were going to build a bridge between our worlds, one pattern at a time. My workshop became our shared sanctuary. Iris would sit on the observation chair, patient as moonlight, while I tinkered with sensors and processors. The device I was building resembled a thick bracelet lined with chromatic sensors, connected to a small display screen that would translate her skin changes into text. "Try this," I said, fitting the prototype around her wrist. The sensors immediately began registering data, flooding my screen with wavelength measurements and intensity readings. Iris looked down at the device, then at me. A gentle wave passed over her arms, what my colorblind eyes perceived as a subtle brightening. The screen flickered and displayed curious/hopeful/warm. Her eyes widened, luminous with what I imagined was wonder. She touched the display, then my face, then the display again. More waves, faster now. The screen scrolled rapidly, amazed/grateful/connected. "It's working," I breathed, unable to contain my excitement. For the first time since she'd arrived, we could truly communicate. She stood and walked to the workshop's large mirror, watching the patterns flow across her reflection. Then she turned to me, and something profound swept over her skin, complex layers of color that made the sensors work overtime. The display struggled to process it all. Beautiful slash deep slash undefined slash growing slash warm slash bright slash grateful slash something more. That last phrase made my heart skip. Something more. I looked up at her, and she was watching me with an intensity that transcended language barriers. In that moment, I realized the device wasn't just translating her emotions. It was revealing something deeper growing between us, something my colorblind world could finally begin to understand. Tell me about your world, I said, adjusting the translator's sensitivity settings. We were in the observatory, Europa's pale sun casting long shadows through the crystalline dome. Iris sat beside me, her presence warm despite the cold environment. Complex patterns flowed across her skin, and the translator worked to keep pace. Home/sky/infinite colors/communication through light/harmony/family, singing and spectrum. Your people communicate entirely through color? More patterns. Yes/children learn first colors/like your words/emotions/thoughts/stories/all in light. I studied her face, trying to imagine growing up in a world where every feeling was visible, where privacy meant controlling your own luminescence. What's it like, being here with us? With me? She was quiet for a long moment, her skin barely shifting. Then, slowly, a deep pattern emerged. Lonely/isolated/struggling to translate heart into colors you cannot see. The words hit harder than I expected. I'd been so focused on building a mechanical bridge that I'd forgotten the human cost of our communication barrier. But, she continued, reaching out to touch my hand, hopeful/grateful/something beautiful growing/Thane sees patterns others miss. I see you, I said quietly. Maybe not the way others do, but I see you. Her response was immediate and intense. Yes/understood/seen/different but seen/warm. We sat in comfortable silence, watching Europa's storms dance across the horizon. For the first time since building the translator, I wondered what my own emotions would look like if they could paint themselves across my skin. What colors would this growing feeling in my chest create? There are gaps, I admitted, showing Iris the diagnostic readouts from our latest conversation. Complex emotions that don't translate well into words. The device captures the chromatic data, but the meaning gets lost. We were in my quarters now, sharing dinner, a routine that had developed naturally over the past month. Iris had learned to eat human food, though she still seemed to derive some form of sustenance from the full-spectrum lighting I'd installed for her. She nodded, then deliberately triggered a sequence across her arms. The translator displayed love/deep affection/bonding/untranslatable spectrum/beyond words. See, I pointed to the screen. It's approximating, but love probably doesn't capture what you're actually expressing. Iris leaned forward, studying the readout with intense focus. Then she did something unexpected. She took my hand and placed it against her forearm. Feel/experience/warmth/pulse/rhythm/connection. Through my palm, I could sense the subtle temperature changes that accompanied her color shifts. There was a rhythm to it, like a heartbeat made of light. My translator couldn't capture that physical dimension of her communication. You're not just changing colors, I realized. You're creating symphonies. Temperature, pulse, rhythm, hue. It's all interconnected. Her skin brightened with what the translator read as understanding/excitement/exactly/Thane comprehends. I looked at our hands, still connected, and felt something shift inside me. The device on her wrist was showing my emotional response reflected back through her empathetic patterns. Thane feeling/warm/growing/deep/beautiful. For the first time, I was seeing my own emotions painted in her light. It was more intimate than any conversation we'd ever had. The translator died during breakfast. Iris was mid-sentence, her skin flowing through what had become a familiar morning greeting pattern, when the device sparked and went dark. The sudden silence was deafening. Not audible silence, but the profound quiet of losing a language we'd only just learned to share. Damn, I muttered, examining the burned circuits. Power surge from the colony's grid fluctuations. I can fix it, but it'll take a few days. Iris looked at the dead device, then at me. Her skin cycled through what I recognized as the patterns for sadness and frustration, even without the translator's confirmation. She tried touching the device, as if she could will it back to life. I'm sorry, I said, feeling helpless. I know how important this was for us. She stood and walked to the window, her reflection showing complex patterns I couldn't interpret. Then she turned back to me and did something she'd never done before. She spoke aloud, her voice barely a whisper but unmistakably determined. Thane, she said, my name shaped carefully by unfamiliar vocal cords. Learn colors with hands. She took my hands and placed them against her arms, then triggered a simple pattern. Even without the translator, I could feel the warmth and rhythm that accompanied her sadness. Then she shifted to what I recognized as her happiness pattern, warmer, faster, with a lighter rhythm. You want me to learn without the device? She nodded, then spoke again, each word a careful effort. Feel, not see. Heart, speak, heart. Looking into her luminous eyes, I realized she was right. We'd become dependent on technology to bridge our gap, but there were other ways to communicate. Touch, rhythm, the language of shared presence. Maybe some translations were better felt than seen. Without the translator, we developed new intimacies. Iris would guide my hands across her arms and shoulders, letting me feel the subtle temperature changes that accompanied her emotional expressions. I learned that joy was warm and rapid, like sunlight flickering through leaves. Sadness was cooler and deeper, with slow, wave-like pulses. Anger was sharp heat that moved in quick, jagged patterns. This is actually more accurate than the device, I told her one evening as we practiced in the observatory. My hands rested against her forearms, feeling the gentle rhythm of contentment. The translator could only approximate. This is direct. She smiled, a human expression she'd adopted, and spoke in her careful, whispered English. Better than words. I was beginning to understand her vocal limitations. Her people had never developed complex speech because they'd never needed it. Every thought, every emotion was immediately visible to others. Privacy was achieved through controlling your patterns, not hiding your words. Tell me about fear, I said, curious about the emotion I'd been sensing from her lately. Her skin immediately shifted to a pattern I'd never felt before. Cold, rapid, with an underlying tremor that made my hands shake. The intensity surprised me. Fear of leaving, she whispered. Research, team, talks, sending home. My heart stopped. They want to send you back? She nodded, and the fear pattern intensified. But home is different now. Thane changed everything. I moved my hands to her face, feeling the warm patterns that accompanied what I was learning to recognize as love. A complex symphony of temperature and rhythm that no translator could ever capture. You don't have to go anywhere, I whispered back. This is your home now, if you want it to be. Dr. Rivera's office felt cold despite the heating systems. Iris sat beside me, her skin displaying patterns I now recognized as nervous tension. Quick, shallow pulses with cool undertones. The research team had made their decision. The transport ship arrives next week, Dr. Rivera explained, not meeting my eyes. Iris has provided invaluable data about her species, but the Colony Council believes she belongs with her own people. Have you asked what she wants? I demanded. Thane, be reasonable. She's not human. She needs what any sentient being needs, I interrupted. The right to choose her own future. Iris touched my arm, and through my palm I felt her speaking. Complex patterns that expressed frustration, sadness, and something else. Determination, maybe. She stood and faced Dr. Rivera, then did something that surprised everyone. She spoke aloud, her voice stronger than I'd ever heard it. I choose to stay, she said clearly. This is my home. Thane is my family. Dr. Rivera looked between us, and I saw the moment she understood. You're in love with her. Yes, I said without hesitation. And she with me. Iris's skin erupted in patterns I'd come to know as joy mixed with deep affection. Through our connected hands, I felt her emotional response to my declaration, warm, bright, and absolutely certain. The council won't approve, Dr. Rivera began. Then we'll leave the colony, I said. There are other worlds, other places that might be more accepting of unusual families. Iris squeezed my hand, her patterns showing complete agreement. Whatever came next, we would face it together. Dr. Rivera sighed, studying us both. You realize you're asking me to risk my career to keep an alien refugee? I felt Iris's response before I saw it. Gratitude mixed with hope, but also understanding if the answer was no. The hearing took place in the colony's main council chamber. Iris and I sat at the front table while 5 council members deliberated her future. I'd repaired the translator for the proceedings, though by now I barely needed it to understand her. The question before us, Council Leader Vance said, is whether a non-human entity can be granted colony citizenship and the right to permanent residence. Iris stood, her translator active, and addressed the council directly. Her skin showed calm determination as she spoke. Honored Council / I understand your concerns / different species / unknown intentions / but observe my actions / months of cooperation / sharing knowledge / learning your ways / contributing to community. Her English had improved dramatically, but she still preferred her natural communication for formal occasions. The translator kept pace as she continued. Thane bridged our world / built understanding where none existed / love transcends species / request permission to build life here / together. Counselor Martinez leaned forward. What about your own people? Don't they need you? Iris's patterns shifted to sadness mixed with acceptance. My ship was exile vessel / diplomatic mission gone wrong / unlikely welcome home / but here / found family / purpose / love. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. She'd never told me she was an exile. Through our connected hands, I felt her shame and fear that this knowledge might change how I saw her. I stood. Whatever brought her here, whatever her past, she's proven herself to be exactly what our colony needs. Someone who bridges differences, who finds ways to communicate across impossible barriers. If we can't accept her, what does that say about us as a community? The council deliberated for hours. When they returned, Council Leader Vance's expression was unreadable. By a vote of 3-2, we grant Iris full colony citizenship, with all rights and responsibilities thereof. The relief that flooded through our joined hands was indescribable. 1 year later, I stood in our shared workshop, watching Iris work on her latest project, a color translation device for other colorblind colonists. Her skin showed patterns of deep concentration mixed with contentment, rhythms I could now read as easily as written words. Almost finished, she said aloud. Her English now fluent, though she still preferred her natural language for emotional conversations. 3 more colorblind residents want translators. I smiled, remembering how isolated she'd felt in those early days. Now she was the colony's unofficial ambassador for alternative communication methods, helping others bridge their own sensory gaps. She looked up from her work, and her skin immediately shifted to the pattern I loved most. The complex symphony that meant deep love mixed with perfect contentment. It was warm and bright and rhythmic, like sunshine made tangible. Happy anniversary, I said, though the words felt inadequate. She stood and came to me, placing her hands against my face. Through her touch, I felt her response. Gratitude, joy, and something else. Something new. Thane / beloved / learned something wonderful / want to share. She guided my hands to her abdomen, and I felt a pattern unlike anything I'd experienced before, warm, rapid, but with an underlying harmony that seemed to echo with its own rhythm. My breath caught. Is that? Her skin erupted in the brightest pattern I'd ever felt through my palms. Pure joy mixed with excitement and anticipation. New life / our child / half human half chromatic / will see colors and feel patterns / bridge between worlds. I pulled her close, tears streaming down my face. Our child would see the colors I never could, but would also inherit my ability to find patterns and structures in chaos. They would be a living bridge between our worlds. I love you, I whispered against her ear. Her response painted itself across every inch of her skin. Love so bright and warm and complex that even without seeing the colors, I knew it was beautiful. In my grayscale world, she had become the most vivid thing I'd ever experienced. And soon we would share that gift with a new generation.